And the event happened, guys. Dragon Ball Genkata Matsuri brought a bombastic piece of news. Come with me because I'm exploding with emotion, literally. I'm like Cell blowing himself up back there in the Z Saga. Damn, that's amazing, guys. What news do we have about the anime? Come with me, guys, get your hearts ready. Let's go. Already run and subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. Dragon Ball came with a bombastic piece of news, the Galactic Patrol, so you already know, right? This brings a huge emotion to our hearts. Finally, some good news for Dragon Ball fans. And we couldn't expect anything different, right guys, because the Galactic Patrol saga is totally cinema. Dragon Ball returned to the center of the stage with bombastic news, and its name is the Galactic Patrol. Just hearing that already gives you chills, because when Dragon Ball brings the Galactic Patrol to the front of the story, you already know it's not just anything. It's not a generic villain. It's not a small threat. It's cosmic stuff. It's universal scale. It's something that messes with the laws of the universe, with the gods, with the angels, with everything that was established after the Tournament of Power. And it couldn't be different, because the Galactic Patrol saga is not just good, it is totally cinema. And this is where the name that many were already waiting to hear officially, with strength, with weight, with a global stage, comes in. Morrow, the Devourer of Worlds, the Mage of the Universe, the villain who doesn't win through brute force, but through intelligence, manipulation, and the despair he causes. The villain who makes Goku, Vegeta, the gods, and even the angels rethink what it means to fight. The Morrow saga is not just another saga, it is a narrative turning point, and Genkata Matsuri made that clear without needing to say everything directly. Because Dragon Ball also knows how to speak between the lines. The Galactic Patrol emerges as the guiding thread of this new phase of the anime, not as something secondary, not as comic relief, but as a pillar of the story. Miras, Jaco, the Galactic Prison, universe-level criminals. All of this comes to life in a way the anime has never explored before. And here is the most important point. This saga demands cinematic treatment. You can't adapt Morrow as if it were a common saga. It asks for atmosphere, it asks for tension, it asks for silence in some moments, it asks for a heavy soundtrack, it asks for framing that conveys the feeling that something very wrong is happening in the universe. The story begins with a false sense of normality. The universe moves on after the Tournament of Power. Goku and Vegeta continue training, each in their own way, believing they have already faced the worst the multiverse could offer. And it is exactly at this moment that Morrow appears, not as an explosion, not as a direct attack, but as a whisper, a silent rupture in the cosmic order. Planets begin to die, not explode, die. Life is drained, energy disappears, entire systems collapse without understanding why. The Galactic Patrol, which has always operated behind the scenes, notices something that not even the gods were observing closely. An ancient prisoner has escaped, a being so dangerous that he was sealed not only because of his strength, but because of his ability to learn, to evolve, to absorb vital energy on an absurd scale. Morrow does not fight to prove anything. He fights to survive eternally, and for that, he consumes everything. When Goku and Vegeta enter the scene, the shock is immediate. For the first time in a long time, they are not dealing with someone who gets stronger by getting beaten. They are dealing with someone who gets stronger simply by their existence. Every blow, every key explosion, every transformation accelerates their own defeat, and this completely changes the dynamic of the saga. The viewer realizes that strength doesn't help, screaming doesn't help, a new transformation doesn't help, something different needs to happen. Vegeta, once again, takes on a gigantic narrative role. He understands before Goku that this is not a normal fight. He realizes that Morrow represents everything the Saiyans did in the past, but taken to the extreme. Drained planets, exterminated peoples not out of hatred, but out of convenience. And this creates a powerful internal conflict in Vegeta. He is not fighting only against Morrow. He is fighting against the reflection of what he himself once was. That is why Vegeta's trip to Yardrat gains absurd weight in this saga. It's not just training, it's redemption, it's learning, it's understanding that strength without control is useless. The anime can explore this much more deeply than the manga, with episodes focused on introspection, on combat philosophy, on spirituality, the forced spirit fission technique, absolute key control. All of this becomes a narrative tool, not just a new power. Meanwhile, Goku follows another path. Ultra Instinct, which seemed to be the pinnacle, shows its limitations, not because it is weak, but because it was not made to deal with an enemy who does not attack the body directly, but the essence. And this is brilliant, because it breaks that simple Dragon Ball logic, where reaching a new form is enough to win. Here, it isn't. Mirror enters as one of the most important characters of the saga, an apparently ordinary galactic patrolman, but who carries a gigantic secret. The anime can work this with much more mystery, planting visual clues, ambiguous dialogues, silent looks. When the truth comes out, the emotional impact is enormous. An angel who chose to fight as a mortal, a being who breaks the rules of the universe itself because he believes it is worth saving life, even if it costs his own existence. The fight against Morrow escalates in an absurd way. He absorbs energy from Earth. He absorbs energy from the warriors. He merges with the planet. He becomes the battlefield itself. This is not just visually impressive, it is symbolic. The villain stops being a body and becomes an idea, a system, a threat that cannot simply be destroyed without consequences. And this is where Dragon Ball can deliver one of the most emotional moments in the entire franchise. Goku finally understands the true meaning of Ultra Instinct, not as a technique, not as power, but as a state of being. He fights without hatred, without ego, without the desire to win. He fights because he needs to protect, and that changes everything. Every movement is precise. Every strike is necessary. There is no excess. There is no waste. The end of the saga is not just about defeating Morrow. It is about the universe learning something from him. The gods watch in silence. Whis watches in silence, because they realize that Goku and Vegeta are walking towards something that goes beyond brute strength, something that even threatens the position of the gods of destruction themselves. The Galactic Patrol saga, adapted this way, is not just the return of the anime. It is the foundation of a new era of Dragon Ball, a more mature era, more cosmic, more philosophical, without losing its essence, its humor, its emotion, its adrenaline. It is Dragon Ball growing together with the audience that grew up with it. And when Genkida Matsuri brings this news, it is not just announcing a saga. It is telling the fans, Dragon Ball still has a lot to say. It still has a lot to show. There are still stories that only now can be told. This here is not empty nostalgia. This here is evolution. This here is cinema. This here is Dragon Ball at the peak of its identity. And if this is only the beginning, if the Galactic Patrol is the first step, then hold on, because the Dragon Ball universe is about to explode again. And this time, in a way we have never seen before. An important and totally legitimate question would be whether Dragon Ball would follow the same animation standard. The short answer is, it should not follow exactly the same standard, and that paradoxically is great news. Now, the truly correct answer requires context, market reading, Toei's history, and, above all, an understanding of what the Galactic Patrol saga and Morrow require narratively. If the animation tried to follow the same visual and structural pattern of the early phases of Dragon Ball Super, especially the initial post, Battle of Gods and Resurrection F period, it would simply break the experience. The Morrow saga cannot support that simpler, episodic, and irregular animation model. It demands consistency, strong direction, and its own visual identity. And Toei knows this today much more than it did in 2015. The first point is the moment of the industry. Dragon Ball Super would return in a completely different scenario from that of the beginning of the series. Today, the standard for major anime franchises has changed. Production is no longer based only on endless weekly airing with tight deadlines. The current model favors closed arcs, advanced production, and better planned seasons, exactly as we have seen in series like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, and even Dragon Ball Daima itself, which has already made it clear that Toei is willing to invest more time and care when the project justifies it. And the Morrow saga justifies it. The second point is the tone of the story. Morrow is not a villain of constant brawling. He is threat, erosion, silent terror. This demands animation that works well with atmosphere, framing, lighting, and pacing. Many scenes in this saga work better, with less movement, more tension, more silence, and heavier soundtrack. This automatically pushes the production toward a standard closer to what we saw in the best episodes of the Tournament of Power, especially those animated by top-tier teams, and not the average standard of the series. Another crucial factor is the level of power and concept involved. Energy absorption on a planetary scale, Morrow's fusion with Earth, Ultra Instinct in its purest state, and Miras's role as an angel demand more refined visual effects. You cannot resolve this with excessive frame reuse or economical animation. The audience would not accept it, and Toei knows this. Dragon Ball today is a premium global product, and the visual standard needs to reflect that. In addition, there is a very important strategic element. The Morrow saga is the first major and netted saga of the anime after a long hiatus. It carries the responsibility of winning back the audience, generating engagement, and repositioning Dragon Ball Super in the market. This means that the first episodes need to cause immediate impact. Normally, in these cases, studios concentrate key animators, experienced directors, and higher budgets in the initial arc to create a clear perception of quality. This does not mean that all episodes will have movie-level quality, which is not realistic in serialized production, but it does mean that the average standard tends to be higher and more stable than it was at the beginning of Super. Fewer abrupt drops in quality, less line art inconsistency, and more aesthetic unity. It is also very likely that Toei will adopt a hybrid approach, with more visually restrained setup episodes and key battles with special direction, something that already works very well today. Fights like Goku against Morrow on Earth, Vegeta after returning from Yardrat, and the final confrontation with Goku in complete Ultra Instinct are moments that would inevitably receive standout treatment. In summary, it is not reasonable to expect the animation to follow exactly the same old standard, and honestly, it shouldn't. Everything indicates that Toei understands that the Galactic Patrol saga demands a more mature, more cinematic, and more visually consistent Dragon Ball. Not necessarily perfect all the time, but clearly above what we saw in the most problematic moments of the past. If Dragon Ball is going to return, it needs to return big, and everything points to an animation standard that respects the weight of this saga and the expectation it carries. If this is confirmed, the Morrow saga has everything it needs to be not only one of the best Dragon Ball stories, but also one of the most beautiful to watch. To close in a correct and consistent way, the key points of the Morrow saga need to be understood not only as events, but as narrative axes that support the entire story. Starting with Vegeta is the most logical path, because it is exactly with him that the saga begins to differentiate itself from any other phase of Dragon Ball. Vegeta enters the Morrow saga in a very specific state. He is not chasing a new transformation out of pride, nor trying to surpass Goku through direct competition. For the first time, he carries the real weight of the past. When Morrow appears draining planets, Vegeta immediately understands the meaning of this, because he has already been on the other side. He has already been the conqueror, the destroyer, the invader who arrived, drained resources, eliminated resistance, and left. The difference is that Morrow does this in an even colder, more calculated way, without any trace of emotion. This creates in Vegeta a deep, almost silent discomfort that drives him throughout the entire saga. Vegeta's first key point is the awareness that brute force does not solve anything. When facing Morrow for the first time, Vegeta realizes something that Goku takes longer to accept. Every blow, every key explosion, every increase in power only feeds the enemy. This completely breaks the classic Dragon Ball logic. It is not a fight to win. It is a fight to not lose everything. Vegeta understands that if he keeps fighting the way he always has, he is helping the villain grow. This realization is the most important narrative trigger for his next decision. Vegeta's trip to Yardrat is the second major key point, and perhaps the most symbolic of the entire saga. Yardrat does not represent just new techniques. It represents a new way of seeing combat. There, Vegeta learns that ki is not just energy to attack, but something that can be controlled, separated, redistributed. The Force Spirit Fission technique is not just a new power. It is a direct response to the original sin of the Saiyans, stealing energy, dominating by force, absorbing what does not belong to them. Vegeta learns exactly the opposite of that. This training marks a clear psychological turning point. Vegeta stops fighting only to win and starts fighting to correct. He understands that part of the responsibility for the emergence of monsters like Morrow exists because warriors like him, in the past, helped normalize this type of destruction. This gives the character a rarity of depth in Dragon Ball and turns his fight against Morrow into something personal, almost moral. The third key point is Vegeta's return to Earth. This moment is not just hype, it is affirmation. When Vegeta applies Force Spirit Fission to Morrow, the viewer finally understands that this technique was made specifically for this villain. Each blow does not just hurt Morrow's body, it undoes everything he stole. Planets, lives, energy, everything begins to return to their places of origin. It is one of the most satisfying moments of the saga, because it completely inverts the power dynamic. For the first time, Morrow is not growing, He is being dismantled. Here comes another fundamental key point. Vegeta does what Goku does not. He does not spare. He does not underestimate. He does not give the villain a chance to recover out of mercy. Vegeta understands that compassion, in this case, would be irresponsibility. This stance creates a direct contrast with Goku and reinforces the idea that the two characters are evolving in different, yet complementary directions. The fourth key point tied to Vegeta is the limit of redemption. Even doing everything right, even having the ideal technique, Vegeta is not the one who finishes the saga, and this does not diminish his importance. On the contrary, it reinforces a strong message. Redemption is not about being the final hero, it is about doing what needs to be done. Vegeta fulfills his role by dismantling Morrow, restoring balance, and preparing the ground for the conclusion. Without him, victory simply would not exist. From Vegeta onward, the other key points of the Morrow saga fit naturally. Morrow as a villain represents the exhaustion of the logic of absolute power, a being that consumes everything until nothing remains, including itself. Goku represents the evolution of Ultra Instinct as a mental and philosophical state, not just as a transformation. Mirror symbolizes conscious sacrifice, the breaking of divine rules in the name of life, and his loss gives real weight to the consequences of this universe. The Galactic Patrol ceases to be a supporting element and becomes a central piece of cosmic order, showing that not everything is resolved with gods and Saiyans. In the end, the Morrow saga is a story about limits. Limits of power, of morality, of redemption, and of responsibility. Vegeta is the emotional axis of this saga, because he understands this before everyone else. He does not fight to prove that he is the strongest. He fights because he knows exactly what happens when no one imposes limits on a devourer of worlds. And that is what makes this saga one of the most mature and important in Dragon Ball.